Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. G7 foreign ministers meeting near Paris are under renewed pressure after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived with a clear message. Allies must do more to address Iran and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. With energy flows disrupted and divisions emerging over priorities between Iran and Ukraine, the talks highlight growing strain within the transatlantic alliance. Now, joining us to discuss it further is Nicolas Tenzer, Chairman of the Center for Study and Research on Political Decision. Good to have you with us on TVP World. Let's start with exactly that quote and expectation, rather, of Marco Rubio. Do you think that he will be successful? Will he sell this vision of also the United States and Donald Trump to the G7?
Absolutely not. I think no. Let's speak very bluntly. The transatlantic alliance is broken. There is absolutely no more trust between the two sides of the Atlantic right now, because the pressures coming from the US are absolutely not acceptable. We perfectly know in Europe that we cannot trust anymore the US if one of the NATO European countries is attacked. We perfectly know that the US will do absolutely nothing. And then there is also what happened with Ukraine, where we know that since 1 year, the US has not helped Ukraine anymore. And more recently, according to some information from the Washington Post, the US could even take the weapons funded by the EU for 750 million euros to put them to Iran. Everything is completely, completely broken. Of course, you may have some polite answers from the European allies, but I can say that in most of the European chancelleries, there is absolutely no expectations from the US on anything when it comes to European interest.
All right. Interesting point there. Also, we have a soundbite I'd like to share now of Marco Rubio just before he departed, actually, to France. Very much about someone asking him about criticism that the president had against NATO countries. And, of course, that connection with Ukraine. Let's roll that now for you and our audience.
I think there was a couple of the leaders in Europe who said that this was not Europe's war. Well, Ukraine is not America's war, and yet we've contributed more to that fight than any other country in the world. So it'll be something to examine. The president will have to take into account down the road.
So it is not our war, it is not America's war, referring to Ukraine. What do you make of that? Is that strategy going to work? What does that do to alliance cohesion?
Two things. First of all, what Marco Rubio said, it's absolutely not new, because, many times Trump said exactly the same thing. And of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as we say. And the fact that, the US right now is fully siding with Russia, is not protecting the interest of Ukraine, and not protecting at all the interest of the EU and Europe as such, which are completely intertwined, show perfectly that there is absolutely no confidence that we can put on the US to defend and to protect the security of Europe. What is absolutely not acceptable from our former US allies is that they deny the fact that the only time that the Article 5 was triggered, it was after 9/11, so 21. And all the allies came to help the Americans in the war in Afghanistan. And we never said at that time it's not our war. And the fact is that if we consider, what all my American friends tell me, good American friends, experts coming from both sides of the political spectrum in the US, they consider that in terms of security, the attack of Russia against Ukraine, against Europe, is American war. If Russia wins, at the end of the day, the American security as such will be jeopardized.
Mm-hmm. Also curious, the G7, I mean, that also includes not just European countries, that's also Canada, and also Japan. Now, if we're looking at very much saying this is not our war, looking at the unity, if there is such a word to use right now, is there unity within the G7 when it comes to Strait of Hormuz? If we're looking at Japan, I mean, Asian economies are very much reliant on that 20% of that oil flows that come through the Strait of Hormuz. Will that sort of change, let's say, any sort of joint statement? Do we see unity here, or how do you see the play out today?
I think that on those points, I think there is a clear unity, and for the same reasons that we have a big concern from Asian countries such as Japan and South Korea being not member of the G7, unity in the support of Ukraine for exactly the same reasons, because we perfectly know that if Russia is not defeated in Ukraine, and ultimately, Russia is losing the war, then, I mean, the security for Taiwan will be certainly endangered. And you were talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and certainly, I mean, there is an ability or willingness at the end of the day of the Chinese to block the strait. So, I mean, everything is intertwined. And I think that there is more unity between the European members of the G7 and Canada and Japan on those stories. The only one country who is completely isolated right now in terms of interest, in terms of credibility, in terms of values as well, is the US. Basically, the US right now went to the, I will say, other side of the force. And that's a true problem that we have to face for how many years, no one knows. But as long as Trump is in power, certainly there is a big problem, and the G7 is G6 plus 1.
Okay. Also curious what you make. I mean, we talked about energy already. Not so long ago, G7 countries were talking about these strategic reserves, making those available. That didn't go forward. Do you think we'll get anything concrete, and how much can these countries realistically do without really stepping in militarily?
Well, I think that the countries can do a lot of things, in terms of oil and gas reserves. Then, I mean, the main question is, of course, that the stocks are huge, but not infinite. And if the war, is enduring for, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, no one knows right now, certainly there will be a big issues, because the stock won't be enough, especially when the winter will come, in Europe, and but also, in some Asian countries as well. I mean, northern, northeastern Asian countries, we will have to face an enormous shock. And the fact is that with the war in Iran, the US has opened a Pandora box, and we absolutely not know in what shape will be, the European and also Asian economy, in 6 months and 1 year. And the problem is that we will have to disconnect, I mean, the economic and energy issues for Europe and for Asia as well, with the questions of, I will say, the military operations, in Iran. We cannot accept also, because that's also a question of principle, to be, in a war that we were not, averted of. There is absolutely no coordination between the US and the European allies, and also the Japan and South Korea. I mean, the US is not the master that we have to obey. If there is no coordination, if there is no trust also, as we see with the tariff imposed by the US, it's not an alliance anymore. There must be a minimum of trust, and the trust, as I said, is fully broken. So I think there is no questions, and it was very clear, in the stance of both President Macron, but also Keir Starmer and others, and Chancellor Merz, that there is certainly no way to join the war against Iran. We will have to protect the interest of our own interest and the interest of the countries like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. We have some agreement with. But we cannot be engaged in the war.
I mean, this also is taking place, I mean, near Paris. I mean, these are foreign ministers meeting. I mean, the main leaders summit, you mentioned some of those leaders will come together in June, also in France. I just want to get your take. I mean, this has come from a couple of outlets, including Politico recently, that the summit was actually moved, the leaders' summit was moved by the request, apparently, that it clashed with Donald Trump's birthday. I just want to get your sense of how that, let's say, what it says about the alliance, if that ever has happened before. How is that interpreted in France?
Well, I think one of the key points is, first of all, we always want to please Trump as much as we can. Okay, it was his birthday, and we know that Trump is a fully narcissistic personality, that he wants to organize, I mean, a big ceremony for his own 80th birthdays, you know, in the US. And so, okay, France and the others say, okay, we will try maybe to accommodate Trump for that. I mean, that was, I mean, completely stupid. I think no other head of state or government, with maybe the exception of Kim Jong-un or, I mean, someone like this, would have done that. But okay, that's, let's say, that's diplomacy. But the problem is that all the temptations that we had, I mean, it could be, of course, France tried to manage Trump. There was very nice words from President Macron. You remember during the first terms of Trump, there was a big invitations to the military parade for the National Day, you know, in France, and the dinner at the Eiffel Tower, and etc., etc. But it's completely useless. It's completely useless. The fact is that Trump is doing exactly what he wants. He doesn't care about the allies, and there is no way to have, I will say, normal discussion with him. There is discussions, there could be disputes between, let's say, France, Germany, or Poland, I mean, the country of the Triangle of Weimar. Okay, they could disagree on many things, that's normal. But at the end of the day, they can discuss as adults. But when the US is not governed by an adult, and also by someone who is causing up to our enemies like Russia and maybe China as well, what can we do? What can we do? And that's an embarrassment for everyone.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us all those insights on this topic. G7 foreign leaders, rather foreign ministers meeting outside of Paris. Thank you so much, Nicolas Tenzer, Chairman of CERAP. Thank you. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.